Welcome to the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's Greek Reading 1 course. In this lesson, we'll be studying the first 5 verses of chapter 1 of the Gospel of St. John. In this lesson, we begin our study of the Greek text of the Gospel of St. John. We will use these lessons to build our Greek vocabulary. In each lesson, we will study 5 verses until we have completed the first 5 chapters of the Gospel. This lesson assumes that students have already learned the Greek alphabet, the sounds of all Greek letters, breathing and accent marks, and can read Greek words. If you are not yet able to read Greek words, please study the How to Read Greek videos on the course page in the Study Center before moving on. In order to succeed in your studies in Greek reading, you should follow these 4 rules. First, study the lesson exposition carefully and completely. Second, repeat translation exercises until they can be completed without help from the lesson. Third, memorize all lesson vocabulary. And fourth, work to earn a perfect score on the lesson assessment without help from the lesson. If you follow these instructions, you'll do well in Greek reading. Let's begin by reading the first 5 verses of the Gospel of St. John. This is going to be a great opportunity to practice Greek reading and pronunciation, so follow along carefully. Verse 1. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. Verse 2. Houtos ein en arche pros ton theon. Verse 3. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto ude hen ho gegonen. Verse 4. En auto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein tophos ton anthropon. Verse 5. Kai tophos en te scotia phaine, kai he scotia auto ou katelaben. Now let's focus on verse 1 and begin the lesson. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. Let's learn the meaning of all of the Greek words in verse 1. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. The first word in the sentence is en, a preposition that means in. Notice that I've put the Latin word used by St. Jerome to translate the Greek in parentheses at the end of each line. This will help students who have already studied Latin to understand the Greek vocabulary. The second word in this sentence is arche. This is a substantive noun that means beginning. Think of the English word archaeology, which means the study of the beginning. arche, the beginning. We then see the Greek verb ein, which means was. We then see the Greek definite article ho, which means the. If you've studied Latin, you would know that Latin does not use definite articles, so studying Greek will require that you get used to using Greek articles. The definite article ho means the. We then see the substantive noun logos, which means word. En arche ein ho logos. In the beginning was the word. Next we see the conjunction kai, which means and. We then see the phrase again, ho logos, which means the word. We then see the verb ein again, which means was. Next we see the Greek preposition pros, which means with. We then see another definite article, ton, which is another form of the same article that we saw before, ho. Ton is translated the. We then see theon, which is a noun that means God. When you hear the word theon, you should think of theology, which means the study or the science of God. Theon, God. Kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, and the word was with the God. Next we have the conjunction kai again, which means and. We then have another form of the same word, theos, which means God. We then have the verb ein again, which means was, and the phrase ho logos, the word. Kai theos ein ho logos, and God was the word. Let's learn the translation of verse 1. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. En arche translates as in the beginning. Ein ho logos was the word. En arche ein ho logos, in the beginning was the word. Kai ho logos, and the word, ein pros ton theon, and the word was with the God, ton theon. Kai theos ein ho logos, and God was the word. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the God, and God was the Word. In this verse, we read the Greek phrase ho logos ein pros ton theon, which translates awkwardly into English. And the Word was with the God. Normally, we do not use the article the before God. In Greek, the article is used for more than just the word the. We'll learn more about this in Greek grammar. At the end of this verse, we read kai theos ein ho logos, which translates as and God was the Word. In English Bibles, we will read, and the Word was God. God and the Word are switched in their order. The reason why this is done in English Bibles is to put the subject first, because that's how we communicate in English. We identify the subject by stating it first. In Greek, that's not necessary. So we can see kai theos ein ho logos, and a Greek reader or hearer would understand that ho logos is the subject because of the context of the sentence. We're talking about ho logos, the word. That's the subject. We'll learn more about this in Greek grammar. Let's move on to study verse 2, but we'll read both verses 1 and 2 to practice our Greek reading. Verse 1, En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. Verse 2, Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Let's learn the meaning of all of the words in verse 2. The first word we see is hu tos. Make sure you pay attention to the breathing mark and the accent. Hu tos. This is a pronoun that means this. We then see the Greek verb ein, which means was. And right after that, we see the preposition en. Compare the verb ein and the preposition en. Notice the long eta, ein, on the verb, and the short epsilon, en, on the preposition. This preposition en means in. We then see arche. Note the circumflex accent at the end of that word, arche, rise and fall on that syllable. Arche, that means the beginning. We then see the preposition pros, which means with, the article ton, which means the, and theon, the noun, which means God. Now let's learn the translation of verse 2. Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Hu tos, this, ein, was, en arche, in the beginning, pros ton theon, with the God. Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. This was in the beginning with the God. Be sure to give careful attention to aspiration or breathing and accent marks. Sometimes these marks can be the difference between two or more words, and this can be learned in more detail in Greek grammar. Let's move on to verse 3, and we'll read verses 1 through 3 to practice our Greek reading and pronunciation. Verse 1, En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. Verse 2, Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Verse 3, Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto ude hen ho gegonen. Let's learn the meaning of all of the words in verse 3. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto ude hen ho gegonen. The first word, panta, is an adjective meaning everything. In Latin, we saw the adjective omnia and translated it all things. But we need to change that here in Greek and use the translation everything. Panta, everything. The second word is actually the preposition dia. You see the apostrophe, which marks a contraction. That alpha at the end of the word has been dropped because the next word begins with the alpha sound. So dia is shortened here or contracted to d. That's a preposition that means through. Autou is a pronoun that means him. Diautou, through him. We then see the verb egeneto, which means is made. Next we see the conjunction kai, which means and. We then see the preposition choris, which means without. And then we see the pronoun autou again. Choris autou, without him. We then see the verb egeneto again, which means is made. Then we see oude, which is an adverb that means not. We then see the word hen, and pay careful attention to the breathing mark. We saw in verse 2 the preposition en. Here we see the adjective hen with a breathing mark, and that breathing mark shows us that this is a different word. The adjective hen here means one, or one thing. We put these two words together, oude hen, to mean not one thing. That's translated by St. Jerome with the Latin word nihil, which means nothing. But in Greek it's two words, oude hen, not one thing. We then see the pronoun ho. And note that this pronoun ho is not the same word as the article ho. The difference is the accent mark. The accent mark shows that this is the pronoun. That's how important these breathing and accent marks are. So we have the pronoun ha here, which means which. And then lastly, we have the verb gegonen, which means has been made. Let's learn the translation of verse 3. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto oude hen ho gegonen. Panta di autou egeneto, everything through him is made. Kai choris autou, and without him, egeneto oude hen, is made not one thing, ho gegonen, which has been made. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto oude hen ho gegonen. Everything through him is made, and without him is made not one thing which has been made. The Greek word egeneto here was translated into Latin by St. Jerome with two Latin words, facta sunt. We translated that as made are in our Latin studies. This was done, that is, St. Jerome used these two words because there is no Latin verb that exactly expresses the idea of this Greek verb. When there is no single word in a language to translate a word in another language, and a phrase needs to be used, it is called circumlocution. The word circumlocution means talking around or using an expression to say or express the same idea. So we see a good example here of circumlocution in St. Jerome's translation of egeneto. Let's study verse 4. We'll read verses 1 through 4. Verse 1. En arche ein hologos, kai hologos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein hologos. Verse 2. Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Verse 3. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto ude hen ho gegonen. And verse 4. En auto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein to phos ton anthropon. Let's learn the meaning of all of the words in verse 4. The verse begins with the preposition en, which we've seen before. It means in. We then see auto. This is another form of the pronoun. Auto means him. En auto, in him. We then see a new noun, zoe, which means life. You can remember this word zoe by thinking of zoology, which is the study of living things, the study of life. Then we see the Greek verb again, ein, which means was. En auto zoe ein. In him life was. We then see the conjunction kai, which means and. We then see the article he, which means the, and zoe again, which means life. We then see the verb ein, which means was, and the article to, which means the. We then see another new vocabulary word, the noun phos, which means light. We then see the article ton, which means of the, and another new noun, anthropon, which means of men. You can remember this word by thinking of the English word anthropology, which means the science of man, anthropology. Let's learn the translation of verse 4. En auto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein, to phos ton anthropon. En auto zoe ein, in him life was. Kai he zoe ein, and the life was, to phos ton anthropon, the light of the men. At the end of this line, the phrase ton anthropon is translated as of the men. But we do not see this article translated by St. Jerome in Latin, who simply wrote hominum, which means of men. We also don't see this article translated in English Bibles. And this shows us that the article has uses other than simply expressing the article the. We'll learn more about the uses of articles in Greek grammar. We've already seen a number of different forms of the article in Greek. We've seen ho, ton, he, to, and ton. These different forms of the article express different ideas, including genders, numbers, and cases. We will learn the details of these forms of the articles in Greek grammar. Let's move on to study verse 5. We'll read all 5 verses to practice our Greek reading and pronunciation. Verse 1. En arche ein hologos, kai hologos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein hologos. Verse 2. Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Verse 3. Panta diautou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto oude hen ho gegonen. Verse 4. En auto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein to phos ton anthropon. And verse 5. Kai to phos en te scotia phaine, kai he scotia auto ou katelaben. Let's learn the meaning of all of the words in verse 5. The verse starts with the conjunction kai, which we've seen before, means and. We then see the article to, which means the, and the noun phos, which we saw in verse 4, which means light. To phos, the light. We then see the preposition en, which means in. We then see another form of the article te, which means the, and scotia, a new vocabulary word, a noun that means darkness. En te scotia, in the darkness. We then see a new verb here in Greek, phaine, which means shines. We then see the conjunction again, kai, and, the article he, the, scotia, darkness, auto, the pronoun that means it. It refers back to the light, phos. We then see the adverb ou, which means not, and finally the verb katelaben, which means did comprehend. Let's learn the translation of verse 5. Kai to phos en te scotia phaine, kai he scotia auto ou katelaben. Kai to phos, and the light, en te scotia, in the darkness, phaine, shines. Kai he scotia, and the darkness, auto ou katelaben, it not did comprehend. Kai to phos en te scotia phaine, kai he scotia auto ou katelaben. And the light in the darkness shines, and the darkness it not did comprehend. The Greek verb katelaben at the end of this verse here is translated did comprehend, which may be confusing. This word comprehend can mean to understand or to overcome. That's true not only of the word comprehend, but of the Greek verb katelaben. 2 different possible meanings. Is St. John saying that the darkness did not understand the light, or that the darkness did not overcome the light? These are the kinds of questions that Bible students need to investigate with the help of church teaching. Now that we've studied the meanings of all of the words in these 5 verses and the translations, let's make a final reading of verses 1 through 5 of John chapter 1. As we go through this, we'll continue to practice our Greek reading and pronunciation, but you should also test your understanding of these Greek verses. If you've studied carefully as we go through, you should understand what you read. If you don't understand what you read, you should keep studying until you do, until you can read through these verses and understand their meaning. So let's read through verses 1 through 5 to finish up this first lesson. Verse 1. En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein ho logos. Verse 2. Hu tos ein en arche pros ton theon. Verse 3. Panta di autou egeneto, kai choris autou egeneto ude hen, ho gegonen. Verse 4. En auto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein, to phos ton anthropon. Verse 5. Kai to phos en te scotia phaine, kai he scotia auto ou katelaben. Before we finish this video, let's review the instructions for how to study in Greek reading. First, study the lesson exposition carefully and completely. Second, repeat the translation exercises until they can be completed without help from the lesson. Third, memorize all lesson vocabulary. And fourth, work to earn a perfect score on the lesson assessment without help from the lesson. When you earn a passing score on your assessment, you can move on to the next lesson. But you should continue to review and retake past assessments until you earn perfect scores without any help from the lesson. That's when you can be sure that you've got those lessons mastered. If you follow these instructions, you'll succeed in Greek reading. I hope that you've enjoyed this first lesson in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's Greek Reading 1 course. In this lesson, we've studied the first 5 verses of chapter 1 of the Gospel of St. John. If you have any questions about this lesson, if there's anything that was unclear, or that you'd simply like to know more about, feel free to contact us anytime. Help is always available. God bless your studies. The Classical Liberal Arts Academy works to research, restore, publish, and teach the classical liberal arts, classical philosophy, and Catholic theology for students of all ages. To learn more about the Academy, visit our website at classicalliberalalarts.com. God bless.